It was just past sunset, a warm wind sweeping over the cracked pavement of our driveway, when everything I thought I knew about Claire began to tilt. I held up the denim jacket I'd found balled up in the back seat of her car, ripped at the collar, faded along the shoulders, definitely not mine. "Whose is this?" I asked, voice even low. Claire, standing halfway between the car and our front door, froze. Just for a second. Then she smiled. That bright, practiced smile that never quite touched her eyes anymore. "Oh," she said, brushing her hair behind her ear. "That's Melissa's brothers. Remember? I told you I gave him a ride a few days ago after that birthday dinner?" "You told me Melissa picked him up," I said. My eyes didn't move. Neither did she. She blinked fast, then gave a short laugh. Right. What I meant was, I offered to give him a ride, but she ended up driving. This must have been from another time. I forgot it was even there. I stepped closer, holding the jacket out like it might bite. "This doesn't look forgotten. It looks lived in. It's got gum wrappers in the pocket, Claire." Her jaw tightened. I could see it in her posture, shoulders stiff, foot twitching slightly. She was working hard to keep her expression neutral, like she was reading off a teleprompter only she could see. "I don't know what you want me to say, Jason," she said, finally. "It's just a jacket. But not mine. Not yours. Not from anyone I've ever seen at our house." She looked away. Not toward me, but toward the street. Past me. I watched her carefully, my grip tightening around the fabric in my hand. "Are you going to look me in the eye and tell me there's nothing going on?" Claire finally met my gaze. But her eyes were guarded, shields drawn. "You're overthinking this. Maybe ask Melissa if you don't believe me." I nodded slowly. "Maybe I will." She scoffed, folding her arms. "God, Jason, do you always have to turn everything into a full-on interrogation?" I stepped back, nodding again. "Not everything. Just the stuff that stinks like a lie." That hit harder than I expected. Her face flickered, just for a second, like she was deciding whether to come clean or double down. But she turned and walked past me into the house without another word. I stood there in the driveway, jacket still in hand, heart thudding against my ribs. I hadn't raised my voice. I hadn't accused her outright. But my gut knew something was off. And the worst part? She knew I knew. Oklahoma had always been slow-moving, long roads, honest folks, church picnics on Sunday. I worked at a local HVAC company, 6 days a week, home by 6 unless a client had a busted furnace or leaky AC unit that couldn't wait. Claire was a dental hygienist. Always good with people, always smiling. The kind of smile that made strangers open up without realizing they were handing her their secrets. We weren't flashy. We weren't rich. But I thought we were steady. Safe. Now, that jacket sat like a grenade on the passenger seat of my truck. And deep in my chest, I felt the pin had already been pulled. The next night, I came home to Miles Davis floating through the air, candles flickering on the dining table, and the unmistakable aroma of something expensive roasting in the oven. Claire emerged from the kitchen in a dark red dress she hadn't worn in 2 years. Her hair was curled, makeup immaculate. She was trying too hard. "Wow," I said, stepping inside. "Did I miss a birthday?" She gave a little laugh that shot right past me. "No occasion. Just wanted to do something nice. You've been working so hard lately." She walked over and kissed me on the cheek. I let her. "Duck confit," she added proudly, lifting the lid off a polished Dutch oven. "With roasted garlic potatoes and green beans. Your favorite, right?" I didn't answer. I hadn't tasted that dish since our 4th anniversary. Back then, it was romantic. This time, it tasted like a bribe. We sat down. She poured 2 glasses of Merlot and toasted to slowing down. I clinked her glass out of habit, then watched her carefully over the rim as I sipped. Her eyes kept darting to the candles, the ceiling, the empty chair across from us. Anywhere but directly at me. "Rough day at the office?" she asked, reaching for a napkin and folding it neatly in her lap. I shrugged. "Standard stuff. Nothing worth going into." She nodded too quickly, taking a long drink from her glass. "Melissa texted me today. Said she might swing by sometime this weekend. She's been so busy with work." I raised my eyebrows. "Oh, Melissa. Remind me again, what does her brother do?" Claire blinked. "Huh. Her brother. The one whose jacket was in your car. What does he do for work?" She paused mid-cut, knife slicing halfway into the duck. He's in tech, I think. He's always traveling, though. I don't really keep up." I just stared at her. "Interesting," I said finally. Because when I called Melissa earlier today to ask about the jacket, she said her brother's been living in Seattle for the past year. Doesn't even own a car anymore. Claire's fork clattered onto her plate. Her mouth opened, but no words came out. Just a soft exhale. You called Melissa? She said, voice thin. I nodded slowly. Figured I'd go straight to the source. There was a beat of silence where all I could hear was the jazz trumpet whining faintly behind her. She reached for her wine again, fingers trembling slightly. She must have misunderstood, Claire murmured. Or maybe I gave her the wrong date. I don't know. It's been a crazy week. I said nothing. I just kept swirling my wine, watching the legs run down the glass like red threads unraveling. She smiled again. Tight, forced, plastic. You think I'm lying to you? I think, I said carefully, that you're working awfully hard to convince me of something. Claire laughed again, louder this time. Too loud. Oh, come on, Jason, she said, waving her hand. It's just dinner. You're making this into a whole mystery when there's nothing here. Can't a woman cook for her husband without being interrogated? I leaned back in my chair. It's not the dinner. It's the performance. She froze. And then, her expression changed. Just for a split second. Her smile flickered like a bad connection. And beneath it, I caught a glimpse of something else. Fear, maybe. Guilt? But she pushed right through it. Fine, she said, standing. You want to believe something happened? Then believe it. I tried to make this night special, and all you're doing is treating me like I'm on trial. She grabbed her wine and walked over to the counter, back to me. I'm tired of feeling like I'm being watched in my own home, she muttered. I'm tired of feeling like a stranger in mine, I said. That hung between us. Heavy. Final. Neither of us moved. The candles danced in silence. I didn't push the subject. Not that night. If she was hiding something, she was going to protect it like her life depended on it. But the cracks were starting to show. Her eyes said more than her words ever could. And in that moment, sitting at the table that used to mean comfort, I realized I was already dining with a ghost. The message came in while I was fixing a leaky condenser on the edge of town. Phone buzzed twice in my pocket, tucked under layers of sweat and Oklahoma dust. Melissa, come with me on a date. I stared at the screen like it had been sent to the wrong Jason. I wiped my hands on a rag, leaned against the side of the truck, and typed back. Me? What? 3 dots blinked. Then came the reply that unseated something deep in my chest. Melissa, your wife is already dating my brother, so forget about her. My vision narrowed to a pinpoint. For a moment, I couldn't hear the cicadas, couldn't smell the motor oil, couldn't feel the heat crawling across my neck. Just those words. Simple. Deadly. Melissa wasn't someone who played games. She was Claire's best friend. She'd been at our engagement dinner, toasted us at the wedding, held Claire's hand through her dad's funeral. She was in all the pictures, all the group texts. So why would she send that? Unless it was the truth. I didn't respond. I just got in my truck, turned the key, and drove straight to Melissa's place. 10 minutes outside town, a little craftsman house shaded by pecans and big porch dreams. She opened the door before I even knocked, like she'd been waiting. Hey, she said softly. She looked different without makeup. Realer, tired. I stepped inside without saying much, and she didn't try to fill the air either. We walked through the narrow hallway, past the gallery of old Polaroids on her wall. Claire and Melissa in matching sundresses. Claire sitting on my lap at a 4th of July cookout. Me and Melissa holding up sparklers like we had the whole world lit in our hands. None of it felt true anymore. Melissa gestured toward the bathroom. You should see it for yourself. I didn't ask what she meant. I stepped in, turned on the light, and there it was. Claire's engagement ring, sitting alone on the edge of the porcelain sink. Like it meant nothing. The diamond she begged me to save for. The one I held in my hand for 2 weeks before working up the nerve to ask her. The one that survived our hardest seasons. Now it was just there, forgotten. I stood still, staring at it. My hands didn't move. My chest was tight. Melissa spoke from behind me. She left it after their 3rd date. I told her to come get it. She didn't. Said she didn't want to explain it to you. I turned slowly to face her. Why are you telling me this? She held my gaze. Because I used to believe in Claire. I used to think you two had the kind of marriage that kept people honest. I didn't know what to say. She lied to me, too, Melissa added. Said you two were separated. That you were seeing someone else. My brother had no clue she was married. She spun the whole thing. I nodded once. I'm sorry, she said, and her voice cracked. I really am. I didn't expect any of this. I stepped toward the door, paused, then looked back at her. Thanks for being honest. She didn't say anything, just nodded, watching me like she was hoping I'd change my mind and stay. But I didn't. Because that night, I realized something simple and cruel. You can share a house, a bed, a life, and still not know the person sitting across from you. When I stepped through the front door that evening, I was met with chaos. Drawers yanked halfway out, closet doors flung open, hangers scattered like broken bones across the bedroom floor. Claire was on her knees near the dresser, digging through her jewelry box with the panic of someone trying to reverse time. She didn't hear me at first, not until I took a few slow steps inside and set my keys on the counter with a deliberate clink. She jerked upright like she'd been caught shoplifting. Oh, you're home early, she said, voice breathless, hair wild, cheeks flushed. I lost something. I've been looking everywhere. Have you seen my? I held it up. Her engagement ring glinted cold under the hallway light, sitting in the center of my palm like a verdict. Claire froze, eyes locked on the ring like it might accuse her out loud. Melissa told me everything, I said quietly. No more stories. There was a beat of silence, just the sound of her shallow breathing. Then she straightened her spine and crossed her arms. So what? You're here to scold me? I didn't blink. I'm here to end it. She scoffed and turned away, pacing the room like a caged animal. You're being dramatic. You don't know the full story. You were seeing someone behind my back? I cut in. You told him we were separated. You left your ring at his sister's house and didn't bother to get it back. She whipped around. You think I meant to leave it there? I forgot, Jason. People forget things. I stepped forward, voice calm but sharper now. You forgot your wedding ring, but remembered to lie. Her expression twisted, and then she snapped. You want to make this ugly? Fine, she spat. We'll just split everything 50-50. The house, the accounts, whatever. I'll get a lawyer. I stared at her, unmoved. I'm not letting you walk away with half of what you didn't care to protect. Oh, please, she laughed bitterly. You think you're the victim here? You work, you sleep, you fix broken fans for a living. That's not a life, Jason. It's a routine. I nodded slowly. And you're the one who said she loved the quiet. The routine. The man who showed up. She faltered just a little, but she caught herself. You don't get to act righteous now, she hissed, voice cracking. People drift. Marriages get boring. At least I didn't throw it all away for some girl from the gym. My jaw tightened. I never stepped out on you, Claire, even when it got hard. Well, maybe that was the problem, she muttered. I took a deep breath, stepped back, and placed the ring carefully on the coffee table between us. You can keep it. Pawn it. Melt it down. Doesn't matter anymore. She stood still, arms crossed like a shield. I walked toward the door. She called out behind me, voice shaking. What are you even going to tell people? I didn't turn around. The truth. And then I left her standing there, alone in a house she'd already broken, ring gleaming on the table like it belonged to someone else. The office smelled like coffee and old carpet glue, one of those high-rise Tulsa firms that looked fancier in photos than it felt in person. My attorney, Glenn Brewster, had that lean, weathered look of a man who'd seen too many marriages fold in conference rooms just like this. His voice was calm, clipped, professional, like he was reading lines from a well-worn playbook. I'm going to be honest with you, Jason, he said, sliding a folder across the table. Oklahoma courts don't hand out clean victories just because someone feels betrayed. We need something provable. I nodded, jaw clenched. She admitted she was with him. Verbally? To you? Yeah. Glenn gave a slow sigh, then leaned back in his chair. Unfortunately, that's not enough. Not in court. You say she cheated. She'll say you misheard or misunderstood. It becomes your word against hers unless there's documentation, photos, video, texts, location data. Something that clearly shows infidelity. He flipped open the folder. Inside were preliminary filings, asset breakdowns, and, mockingly, our wedding photo paper-clipped to a report header. Claire looked perfect in that shot, chin tilted just slightly toward me, that rehearsed smile we'd used 1,000 times. You've got a decent case, Glenn went on. But if we're trying to shift asset division significantly in your favor, you'll need leverage. Proof. I didn't say anything at first. Then I asked the only question that mattered. Can you recommend someone who gets that proof? That's how I met Warren. Warren wasn't slick or charming like you'd expect. He wore the same pair of scuffed black shoes every day and chewed toothpicks like he was training for a tournament. But he got results when they were there to get. He trailed Claire for 7 days, photographed her trips to her mom's house, logged her route to work and back, snapped shots of her leaving Whole Foods and a yoga class she hadn't been to in over a year. A lot of movement, a lot of solo errands, but nothing damning. Warren's report landed on my kitchen table a week later, in a thick manila envelope that felt heavier than it should have. I read every page twice. There was nothing. No late-night rendezvous. No mysterious car pulling into her driveway. No hotel rooms. No blurry photos of her hugging some guy in the shadows. Just errands. Groceries. Silence. I dropped the envelope on the counter and rubbed my face with both hands. She'd cleaned up. That confrontation, me standing in the bedroom with her ring in my palm, that gave her just enough warning. She'd pulled back, locked down, covered her tracks. I sat there for a long time. No TV, no music, just the hum of the fridge and the low thud of the ceiling fan. Glenn had warned me this could happen. Once they know they're being watched, he'd said, they disappear. And unless she slips or someone talks, we've got nothing. I stared at the manila envelope and felt the weight of my own mistake. Too fast. I'd moved too fast. My gut had wanted justice. But justice doesn't work off instincts. It works off evidence. And right now, I had none. Just a growing file. And a woman who knew exactly how to disappear inside the truth she refused to tell. It was a Thursday when I walked through the door and found cardboard boxes stacked like a barricade in the living room. Claire stood in the middle of it all, wrapping one of her framed prints in bubble wrap like she was packing up for a long vacation, not a collapse. She didn't flinch when she saw me, just gave a short glance over her shoulder, as if I was the interruption. Figured I'd get a head start, she said, her tone light, almost cheerful. No point pretending anymore, right? I didn't answer. I walked past the stacked boxes and dropped my keys on the table. She was wearing one of those oversized hoodies she only pulled out when she wanted to look innocent. It didn't work. You moving in with him? I asked, keeping my voice flat. She gave a breathy laugh. God, no. I'm not stupid. I'm moving in with my parents for now. They're thrilled, by the way. Think you've lost your way. She even used air quotes. I leaned against the kitchen island and folded my arms. You really believe you deserve half of everything? Claire turned slowly, holding a framed watercolor in her hands like it was a shield. It's not about what I deserve, Jason. It's about what's fair. We built this life together. So yeah, I'll take my half. You didn't build this house, I said. You decorated it. Her jaw tensed for just a second, but the smile didn't fade. I know you're angry. You feel betrayed. And that's fine. But this isn't about feelings anymore. It's business now. I clenched my teeth. You mean court? She nodded, that smug grin still stuck on her lips. Exactly. My lawyer says the judge will likely go 50-50, especially with no solid proof. So unless you've got a hidden camera or a confession, I'd suggest making peace with reality. I didn't speak. Didn't argue. I just watched her tape up another box and scribble bedroom across the top with a Sharpie. You're awfully calm, she said, glancing at me sideways. I'm not calm, I replied. I'm just done wasting words. That seemed to amuse her. She shrugged, slinging her purse over one shoulder and grabbing a smaller box under her arm. Well, she said, pausing at the door. This was bound to happen eventually. We've both changed. You just didn't notice until someone else did. She didn't wait for a reply, just walked out, her keys jangling in her hand, the door closing behind her like a punctuation mark. I stood in the silence for a long time. All around me were boxes half full of the life we'd pretended to share. Her laugh still echoed faintly in the walls, like smoke that hadn't cleared. But now the house felt different. Wider, colder. And in my chest, something darker stirred. Not rage. Not sadness. Resentment. Deep. Quiet. Coiled like a storm that hadn't yet broken, but would. Soon. If you're still listening, please tap the like button on this video. Melissa opened the door slower this time. She didn't smile. Just stepped aside so I could walk in, barefoot and quiet in her modest living room where the light barely reached past the drawn curtains. A half-finished cup of tea sat cooling on the coffee table. Her house smelled like cinnamon and guilt. Didn't think I'd hear from you again, she said, voice low. I nodded once and sat on the edge of the couch. I need to ask you something, and I want it straight. Melissa sat across from me, folding her hands in her lap like she was bracing herself. Okay, did your brother know Claire was married? I asked, watching her closely. Her eyes flicked away. She bit her lip. Melissa. She swallowed hard. No, he didn't. I sat back, jaw tightening. She told him you were separated? She continued. Said things had been dead between you for a while. He believed her. I did too at first. I didn't say anything. He didn't know until last week, she added quietly. That night you came over. I told him everything. He felt sick. Said he never would have touched her if he knew. I stared at the dark TV screen across the room, watching my reflection flicker dimly against the glass. And now, he's ashamed, Melissa said. He doesn't want trouble, but he does want to apologize. To me? I asked, not looking at her. She nodded. Yeah. He said if you'd hear him out, he'd come. He's not proud of it, Jason. I don't need him to be proud, I said. I need him to be honest. Melissa leaned forward, elbows on her knees. He's not a bad guy. He got pulled into something messy. Claire lied to both of you. I rubbed the back of my neck, tired in a way that felt older than I was. Tell him to come find me, I said, if he's man enough. Melissa didn't flinch at the edge in my voice. She just nodded once. He will. We sat there a while, nothing but the hum of her refrigerator in the next room and the faint tick of a wall clock marking time we couldn't get back. She looked at me for a long second, then said, Do you hate her? I breathed out slowly. No, I just stopped needing her to tell the truth. Melissa nodded again, as if she understood that better than she wanted to. You know, she said gently, there were moments she really did love you. I saw it. Yeah, I murmured. She loved me. Until something shinier came along. She didn't argue. I stood up to leave. Melissa followed me to the door, silent. I paused there, hand on the knob. Thanks, I said quietly, for not keeping her secret. She gave a small, tired smile. I never signed up to lie for her. As I stepped back into the cool evening air, I realized I didn't feel relief, or clarity, or even anger. Just this grim resolve settling into my bones like a long winter. She'd lied to him. She'd lied to me. But now her story wasn't the only one that would be heard. The knock came just after sunset. I was fixing the back screen door, something I'd been meaning to do for months, but never had time for, until now. The sun was throwing long shadows across the kitchen floor, and the house was quiet enough that I could hear the old clock ticking above the fridge. 3 knocks. Firm. Not aggressive. I stood there for a second, just listening. Then I opened the door. Aaron stood on the porch, hands in the pockets of a worn denim jacket, shoulders hunched like he was trying to make himself smaller. His face was thinner than I remembered from Melissa's old photos, more lines around the eyes, like someone who hadn't been sleeping right. You Jason? He asked, voice low. I didn't answer right away, just opened the door wider and nodded toward the living room. Come in. He stepped inside and looked around like he didn't quite belong, like the walls might close in if he stood still too long. Melissa told me you might want to talk, he said, standing just inside the threshold. I didn't offer him a seat. He didn't ask. She also said Claire told you we were separated, I said. Aaron nodded slowly. Yeah, that's what she said the first night I met her. Where was that? A club. Downtown Tulsa. One of those rooftop spots with loud music and drinks in fake copper cups. He gave a nervous laugh. She was confident. Said she was done with her ex. That she just wanted to feel alive again. I didn't flinch. Did she wear a ring? He shook his head. No. I checked. I always check. And she never said anything about a husband. Not once, Aaron replied. I wouldn't have touched her if I knew. I've made dumb decisions, but I don't cross lines like that. I folded my arms and leaned against the wall. How long did it last? Aaron's face went red. We saw each other a few times. Nothing serious. But when I found out, when Melissa told me, you gotta believe me, man, I was sick. I stared at him, measuring the weight of what he was saying. You know she's trying to take me for half of everything, I said. I heard, he said, voice low. I'm sorry. Really. If I'd known. I swear to you, I'd have walked away the second she opened her mouth. I looked him straight in the eyes. Then you need to say that. On record. His brow furrowed. You mean, in court? Yes, I said calmly. I need you to get on that stand and tell a judge exactly what you told me. That she lied. That she said we were separated. That she didn't wear a ring. That she hid everything. Aaron took a step back like the weight of it had just landed on his chest. You sure that's the road you want to take? He asked. It'll get ugly. It's already ugly, I said. Only difference now is whose version of the truth gets believed. He rubbed the back of his neck, glanced toward the door like he wanted to bolt. But then he met my eyes again, steadier this time. I'll do it, he said. If it helps make it right, I'll testify. I nodded once. No handshake. No thank you. Just a silent agreement passed between two men who'd been burned by the same lie. Aaron turned to leave, but paused at the door. You really loved her, huh? I didn't answer right away. Then I said, enough to give her every part of me, and more than enough to fight for what's left. He gave a small nod and stepped out into the night. I closed the door behind him and stood there a moment, letting the quiet settle in. The screen door still needed fixing. The roof still leaked. But now I had something stronger than suspicion. Now I had proof. The courtroom smelled like lemon polish and pressure. Polished floors, high ceilings, those stiff wooden pews that creaked every time someone breathed too deeply. I sat at the plaintiff's table, jaw set, hands folded tightly in front of me. Aaron sat beside me in a pressed shirt that didn't quite fit, his knee bouncing nervously. I hadn't asked him to dress up. He'd done that on his own. Claire was across the room in a slate gray suit she probably picked out for sympathy. Her makeup was lighter than usual, almost bare, like she wanted to appear softer. Honest. Clean. Her lawyer, a tall man with hair too perfect to trust, whispered something in her ear. She gave the faintest nod, but her eyes kept flicking toward me. She still thought I was bluffing. The judge entered. Honorable Marion Tate, sharp-eyed and unsentimental. She looked like someone who'd seen every kind of human mess and didn't care how pretty it was dressed up. When she called the case to order, Claire's lawyer started first, painting a soft-spoken narrative of emotional distance, mutual drift, and a woman who simply wanted peace after years of silence. She was neglected, he said smoothly. She tried to hold the marriage together, but the emotional disconnect became unbearable. I didn't flinch. Then Glenn stood, calm and clear. This case is not about neglect. It's about betrayal. About one spouse making decisions in secret with another man while married, and telling lies to both of them. He turned toward the witness stand. We'd like to call Aaron Phillips. Claire's entire body went rigid. Her lawyer half rose, ready to object, but one look at the judge, and he sat back down. Aaron walked to the stand slowly, as though the air had thickened. He adjusted the mic with shaky fingers, cleared his throat, and looked straight at the judge. Tell us how you met Claire Monroe, Glenn began. Aaron's voice was quiet at first. At a rooftop bar downtown. I didn't know her last name then. Just Claire. Was she wearing a wedding ring? Glenn asked. No. Did she mention being married? No. Aaron said, firmer this time. She said she had just gotten out of something. That her ex was still living in the house, but it was over. Glenn nodded. And when did you find out she was lying? When her friend, my sister, told me the truth. That she was still married. That Jason had no idea she was seeing anyone. Glenn turned toward the bench. No further questions. Claire's lawyer didn't bother cross-examining. Just scribbled something and passed it to Claire. She refused to look at Aaron as he stepped down. You could feel the mood shift like someone cracked open a window in a sealed room. Her lawyer stood, smoothing his tie. Your Honor, we'd like to request a revised settlement. 60% to Mr. Monroe, 40% to my client. Judge Tate raised an eyebrow. He cleared his throat. I meant 70-30. Glenn leaned toward me. You good to reject? I nodded once, firm. All the way. He stood. We reject the settlement. We trust the court's judgment. Judge Tate tapped her pen twice against the file. She looked at Claire, then at me, then back to Aaron's sworn testimony. Her voice was crisp, unwavering. This court finds that Mrs. Monroe engaged in an extramarital affair while actively married, under false pretenses. Her actions, compounded by deception, constitute a breach of marital trust with financial consequence. Claire's fingers gripped the edge of the table. Due to the proven infidelity, the judge continued, the marital estate will not be divided equally. All physical property and assets will be awarded to Mr. Monroe. Mrs. Monroe is entitled only to personal effects and shall vacate the primary residence within 30 days. Silence hit the room like thunder. Claire's face went white. No tears, just shock. She opened her mouth to speak, but the judge had already moved on. Court is adjourned. The gavel cracked once. Final. Aaron exhaled like he'd been holding his breath the entire time. Glenn turned to me with a quiet nod. You got it all. But I didn't smile. I didn't cheer. I just looked at Claire, who now sat perfectly still, defeated but too proud to show it. She glanced at me once, eyes burning. But the power she used to hold over me? Gone. And that was the real victory. I sent Melissa a message the next morning. Me, coffee. Her. Say when. We met at a quiet cafe tucked behind a used bookstore downtown. One of those places where the lights were always low, the air smelled like cinnamon and ink, and the world outside moved just a little slower. She was already at the corner table when I walked in, sipping something from a ceramic mug, her fingers wrapped around it like she needed the warmth. Hey, she said, standing to greet me. You look lighter. I gave a small shrug. Court's over. Yeah, she said softly, settling back into her seat. I heard. I ordered black coffee, nothing fancy, just something to hold. We sat there in silence for a minute, listening to the soft clatter of cups and the low jazz spilling through the ceiling speakers. Then Melissa said, You know, I've been thinking a lot about how all this happened. I glanced at her, and I don't know, she admitted. Claire and I, we used to talk about everything, and somewhere along the way, she just started hiding parts of herself. From me, from you, from everyone. I stayed quiet, letting her take her time. I don't think she started off trying to hurt you, Melissa went on. I think she just got tired of being who she was supposed to be, and then one little secret turned into 100. I stirred my coffee slowly, watching the swirl settle. She told lies so easily, I said, like they were part of her breath. Melissa nodded. Sometimes people break in ways they don't even understand, and they start doing damage just to feel something again. I looked at her, and for the first time in a long while, I didn't feel bitterness, not even toward Claire, just distance. Like that part of my life had been pushed to another shore entirely. Thank you, I said, for not covering for her, for standing up. You didn't deserve to be played like that, Melissa said, and neither did Aaron. I took a sip of coffee. It was hot, bitter, exactly what I needed. She's still your friend? I said, not as a question, but as a quiet observation. Melissa looked out the window. Not really. Not anymore. Some people walk so far off the map, you can't follow them back. We sat there for a while, not saying much after that. Not every story ends with forgiveness. Sometimes it ends with understanding, and that's enough. It's been 3 years. The house I live in now isn't big, but it's quiet. Warm light in the mornings. A garden that somehow keeps surviving Oklahoma summers. There's laughter in the kitchen again, real laughter. And coffee cups with lipstick on the rim that don't make my stomach turn. Melissa moved in slowly, like a breath settling in after a long-held sigh. No ceremony, no rushing. Just two people who had been through enough to know what peace feels like when it finally shows up. We don't talk about Claire much anymore. Sometimes, when a name drops in a mutual friend's story, Melissa will glance at me like she's checking for a wince. But there isn't one. Hasn't been in a long time. I heard Claire remarried not long after the divorce. Some guy from Dallas. It lasted 9 months. Then another man, this time younger. He moved out after 6 weeks. A friend told me she's back living with her mother again, blaming the world for men who don't understand her. But me? I don't feel anything toward her now. Not hate. Not regret. Just a soft sort of distance. Like looking at an old photo of someone you used to know before everything changed. Because that's all she is now. A chapter. One I reread once, and then put away for good. Melissa once said, we don't attract what we want. We attract what we are. Back then, I didn't get it. Now I do. Back then, I was just a man trying to hold a life together with someone who'd already let go. Now, I'm with someone who holds it with me. And that makes all the difference. And that was the end of the story. Melissa could have kept Claire's secret. She could have looked the other way, like so many people do when loyalty gets uncomfortable. But instead, she told the truth. So I've got to ask, do you think Melissa did the right thing by stepping in? Or should she have stayed out of it? Let me know in the comments.